Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to do something a little different and honestly kind of mind-bending. We're going to take a 2,500-year-old Buddhist text and use it to completely reframe your digital anxiety, your screen fatigue, and honestly, the way you look at your smartphone forever. You know that feeling, right? The sheer dread of a completely full, unread inbox. The brain fog from an endless late-night scrolling session. Or that constant phantom buzzing in your pocket that just keeps your nervous system on absolute high alert. I know, it sounds like a massive stretch to use ancient philosophy to fix a modern tech problem, but stick with me here, because this wisdom maps so perfectly onto our hyper-connected lives, it's almost scary.
So let's kick things off with a bit of a jarring reality check. Think about yesterday. Out of the literal hundreds of memes, short videos, hot takes, and comments you consumed across all your apps, can you clearly recall even 5 of them right now? Seriously, take a second. Try to think of 5 specific, distinct things you scrolled past just yesterday.
Well, if you're drawing a blank, don't worry, you are definitely not alone. All those hundreds of missing posts and images entered your eyes, and they stayed in your conscious brain for a staggering average of about 0.3 seconds. And then, poof, vanished completely. I mean, just think about the sheer amount of mental energy you burn every single day processing inputs that evaporate instantly. They're just gone. Disappeared like a popped bubble, leaving absolutely zero trace behind.
To make sense of this totally exhausting cycle, we're diving into our first concept, treating this ancient text as a smartphone manual.
Specifically, we're looking at the Diamond Sutra. But we aren't going to look at it as some abstract, dusty religious text. Instead, we're treating it as a highly practical, surprisingly accurate user manual for your digital life. To do that, we first have to wrap our heads around a foundational concept: conditioned phenomena. This basically means anything that depends on specific conditions to exist. If the conditions change, the thing changes or it just disappears entirely. And this isn't mystical at all. It's just a highly logical way of saying that literally everything, from your phone battery to your corporate career to your social media following, relies on outside factors and is absolutely destined to eventually change and fade away.
Okay, let's look at this foundational quote directly from the text. It says, "All conditioned phenomena are like a dream, an illusion, a bubble, a shadow." Now, a lot of people read that and think, wow, that sounds deeply philosophical and poetic. But in our hyper-connected virtual world, these 4 words have actually become the most literal, everyday truth you experience the very second you open an app. Which brings us right to our next core idea, unpacking the dream, illusion, bubble, and shadow.
Let's break these 4 pillars down and see exactly how they map to your daily digital habits and all that stress that comes with them. First up, the dream. This concept is literally the perfect explanation for internet outrage. Think about the last time you read a wildly frustrating post online. Your anxiety, your anger, your racing heart, that is a very real physical reaction happening inside your actual body. But the dream reminds us that the internet comment causing it is just a weightless, fleeting, fake object. You're having a real physical reaction to a digital phantom that, honestly, you're going to completely forget about in 3 months anyway.
Then we have the illusion. You really have to step back and realize what you are actually looking at online. When you're scrolling and you suddenly feel that pang of envy about someone else's perfect vacation or flawless relationship, you aren't comparing yourself to a real, complex human being. Nope, you're comparing your messy, everyday reality to a highly curated illusion. It's crafted from hundreds of discarded photos, selective lighting, and digital filters that are specifically designed to hide everyday pain and boredom.
Now, this brings us to the bubble, which perfectly highlights the extreme structural fragility of the digital assets we spend literally years trying to build up. Think about how much time goes into networking, posting, and strategizing just to build a following or a brand, only for it to rest on absolutely nothing solid. A bubble can expand massively and look incredibly beautiful to the outside world, sure, but it has zero solid core. It can pop in an absolute instant.
Just consider the modern assets we value so highly. You could hustle for 5,000 loyal followers, but an unannounced algorithm change? That's the pin that pops it, leaving you with zero reach overnight. Or a 10-year career? It can be completely erased by a sudden corporate merger. An online identity you spent years curating can face total deletion from a single, automated account ban. Now, knowing your online empire is just a bubble isn't meant to be a bummer. It's actually meant to give you a massive sigh of relief, because you suddenly realize you shouldn't bet your entire self-worth on something that can be popped by a few lines of updated code.
The last of our 4 pillars is the shadow. A shadow represents things like your bank balance, your job title, or your internet reputation. I mean, think about it. You can't actually hold a reputation in your hands, right? These things merely project an image based on the light of others' opinions, or floating numbers on some server screen halfway across the world. They are secondary projections. They're absolutely not the actual source of your intrinsic value.
Let's pivot for a second and apply this to business, because things get really interesting when KPIs become shadows.
Let's see how this ancient wisdom applies directly to the modern boardroom, specifically for the entrepreneurs, investors, and business owners hanging out with us today. Imagine a hypothetical founder whose entire self-worth is dangerously sliced up into fragile pieces, say 35% based on revenue, 40% on company valuation, and 25% on social followers. If you tie your internal psychological stability entirely to these shifting metrics and KPIs, you are quite literally anchoring your life to a shadow. And what does that mean? It means the very moment the numbers dip, which, let's be real, they inevitably will in any business cycle, you will completely collapse, simply because your foundation was never solid to begin with.
Viewing things through this lens brings us to 3 uncomfortable truths. When you really look at your life this way, a few harsh realities pop up. First, most of your anxiety is actually spent sweating over imaginary scenarios that simply do not exist outside your screen. Second, those digital achievements and high scores you're grinding so hard for, they're going to become outdated incredibly fast. And third, the people you value or even fear online are often just partially constructed projections of who you think they are based on a few pixels. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is that your body is constantly flooding with real, damaging stress hormones to fight imaginary enemies and to protect digital titles that will be utterly meaningless in a decade. Crazy, right?
But hey, take a deep breath, because here is the ultimate relief. Beneath all those fragile metrics, beneath the shifting shadows and the popping bubbles, is your core awareness. The text calls this unconditioned phenomena, or the observer. This is the quiet entity inside you that simply watches the dreams and illusions pass by without being altered by them. It never changes, it never pops, and it absolutely cannot be deleted by an algorithm. It is the real you.
So how do we put this into action? Let's talk about the 3-second practice.
Understanding this philosophy does not mean you have to quit your job, move to a cabin in the woods, and delete all your apps. That is not the goal here at all. It just means you learn to interact with your digital tools without being held hostage by them. So here's a highly actionable daily practice you can start literally right now. The next time you feel a sudden spike of digital anxiety, maybe it's a super alarming email from a client or a nasty comment on a post, just pause for 3 seconds. Mentally recite dream, illusion, bubble, shadow. Then simply ask yourself, which category does my current stressor fall into? Is it a fragile bubble or maybe a curative illusion? If you do this for just 1 month, I promise you the results are profound. You begin to quickly recognize that the object causing your stress isn't permanent, so your mental grip on it naturally loosens. You still continue to work hard and build things, absolutely, but you do it with a genuine sense of playfulness rather than an underlying desperation. You naturally start diversifying your identity away from those fragile bubbles, and most importantly, you deeply connect with your unchanging inner observer. You'll just naturally stop clinging so tightly to digital outcomes, allowing you to build your career and your life with a real sense of lightness and unshakable inner stability.
I want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder. The next time your screen makes your heart race, your palms sweat, or your mood absolutely plummet, take a breath and ask yourself, are you holding on to a dream or reality? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today, and I'll catch you next time as we continue to unpack the big ideas that shape our world.